In 1965, a young architecture student in Paris received his diploma and made an unusual decision. He would not design modern buildings. He would not work in private practice. Instead, he joined the National Center for Scientific Research to dedicate his life to a single question that had haunted him since he first saw photographs of a Roman ruin in Lebanon. How did anyone build it? His name was Jean-Pierre Adam. He was 28, and the ruin that obsessed him sat at the remote edge of the Bekaa Valley, on a hill the Romans had once called Heliopolis, the city of the sun. What drew Adam to Baalbek was not its beauty. It was a single, brutal fact buried within the foundation of the Temple of Jupiter, a fact that, according to the engineering logic of his time, should have been utterly impossible. 3 limestone blocks, each weighing approximately 880 short tons, sat perfectly aligned 30 feet above ground level. They had been resting in that exact position since the 1st century BCE, and no one alive could mathematically explain how they got there. For Adam, this was not a romantic mystery. It was a strict engineering problem that had festered for 2,000 years, simply because nobody had bothered to do the math. He decided to do the math. The work took 12 years. By the time Adam published his findings in 1977, he had become a rare specialist, an archaeologist who did not study ancient buildings merely as cultural artifacts, but as physical objects subject to the laws of motion. His paper on the Trilithon of Baalbek quietly demolished a century of speculation. Adam's argument was deceptively simple. Generations of scholars had failed to explain Baalbek because they were asking the wrong question. They kept looking up at the 30-foot podium, asking how Roman engineers lifted 880 short-ton blocks straight into the air. But Roman engineers had never lifted them vertically. They approached the problem through the horizontal plane, relying on mechanical advantage and multiplied traction. This single shift in framing changed everything. Adam reconstructed the brutal reality of the process. The immense stones were levered onto massive cylindrical wooden rollers using heavy iron pry bars. Teams of oxen and laborers, working in synchronized tandem with hemp ropes and heavy capstan winches, dragged the monoliths forward. Every mechanical component of this process was documented in surviving Roman engineering manuals. Vitruvius described capstan winches in exhaustive detail in On Architecture, explaining how men walking in continuous circles around vertical wooden drums multiplied human force enormously. Using standard compound pulley systems, Adam calculated that a coordinated team of 500 men could generate enough pure traction to move a 1,100-ton block several hundred feet a day. Consider the sheer administrative nightmare of the operation. Moving just one of these monoliths was not merely a feat of physics, it was a triumph of supply chain logistics. To keep 500 men operating the heavy capstan winches, a vast supporting infrastructure was required. Roman quartermasters had to organize the daily import of thousands of pounds of grain, salted meat, and olive oil just to fuel the biological engines pulling the ropes. Temporary timber settlements had to be erected on the perimeter of the Bekaa Valley. Blacksmiths worked around the clock in roaring forge tents, constantly repairing snapped iron chains, reinforcing pry bars, and resharpening the thousands of iron picks blunted daily by the unforgiving limestone. The Roman Empire did not just bring engineers to Baalbek. They brought a fully functioning mobile industrial economy. The true lost technology of the ancient world wasn't acoustic levitation or anti-gravity. It was the ruthless, hyper-efficient bureaucracy of the Roman military machine. There was nothing magical about it. There was only patience, military-grade organization, and the sheer political will of an empire. Across 2,000 years, human beings repeatedly moved monumental stones using ropes, ramps, levers, and mass labor. The Romans, with their vast slave economy and imperial ambition, were the most natural members of this list. For decades, Adam's framework held the line against fringe theories claiming the stones were placed by a lost civilization around 10,000 BCE. But modern archaeology relies on dirt. The indisputable death blow to the myth of a prehistoric Baalbek came through stratigraphy. During excavations, the German Archaeological Institute dug directly beneath the massive foundation trenches where the Trilithon rests. Sealed tight in the compacted dirt beneath the immense weight of the stones, they discovered unmistakable fragments of Hellenistic and early Roman pottery. Furthermore, they found discarded Roman-era column drums used as foundational leveling material. The scientific reality is absolute. You cannot place a monolithic stone carved in 10,000 BCE securely on top of a shattered ceramic pot baked in the 1st century BCE. This stratigraphic evidence proved definitively that the podium is Roman. Exactly how the Romans maneuvered these beasts was further clarified by 21st century technology. In 2021, the Baalbek Reborn project subjected the entire archaeological zone to high-resolution LiDAR scanning. The scans revealed a critical detail, the exact topographic incline. The quarry sits 3,000 feet southwest of the temple complex, at a slightly higher elevation. The Romans did not fight gravity, they weaponized it. Engineers constructed wide, stabilized earthen ramps. The 880-ton stones were guided downhill on rollers, driven by gravity and controlled by massive tension ropes attached to winches acting as brakes. The mathematical scans proved the incline angle of these lost ramps was flawlessly engineered to overcome static friction, while preventing a runaway collapse. Once the stones reached the base of the temple, the true mastery of Roman engineering was revealed in their final millimeter-perfect alignment. These 880-ton blocks were not simply dumped into a foundation trench. They were seamlessly interlocked without a single drop of mortar. This was a deliberate architectural choice. The Bekaa Valley sits directly atop a major fault line, making it a highly active earthquake zone. By relying on immense weight and friction rather than rigid mortar, the Romans essentially created a massive tectonic shock absorber. The dry-laid megaliths of the Trilithon were designed to subtly shift and absorb seismic energy without shattering. It was a masterpiece of structural resilience, engineered specifically to ensure the Temple of Jupiter would survive the violent geology of the region. But one massive question remained. If the Romans successfully moved the Trilithon, why were 3 even larger blocks left abandoned in the quarry? In 2014, a research team led by Dr. Janine Abdelmasih returned to study these giants. They found that the 1,100-ton stone of the pregnant woman was abandoned due to a fatal fracture line. Roman inspectors spotted the flaw and wrote the block off. While excavating, her team made a staggering discovery: a third monolith buried deep in the soil. Measuring 64 feet long and weighing an estimated 1,820 tons, the Forgotten Stone remains the largest single block of stone ever quarried by human hands. Unlike the others, it had no structural flaws. Microscopic analysis of its surfaces confirmed it was carved using standard early Roman iron picks and flat chisels. The data was so exact that researchers could literally map the daily work shifts of ancient quarrymen based on the depth of the iron strikes. So why was it left behind? The sheer scale of the project had finally collided with the harsh reality of imperial decline. Beyond the logistical strain, the Roman administration likely calculated that the marginal prestige of moving an even larger stone did not outweigh the risk of bankrupted treasuries or overextended labor forces. The engine of conquest was slowing down. The answer was entirely mundane. By the late 2nd century CE, the Roman economy was stalling. Funding for ambitious construction was tightening, and the Trilithon was already in place. Dragging 3 more colossal stones 3,000 feet simply to add another layer to a finished podium was a luxury the empire could no longer justify. The Forgotten Stone was abandoned because of an accountant. Every archaeologist working in the Bekaa Valley today builds directly upon the framework laid down in 1977. Ancient megalithic construction is best understood through patient physical reconstruction, not myth. When we encounter something built by ancient hands that seems to defy modern explanation, the failure is almost always in our own imagination, not in their mechanical capability. The Romans lacked steel cables and engines. They had hemp ropes, earthen ramps, massive ox teams, and an unparalleled administrative system. That was more than enough. Baalbek looks impossible because we have lost the institutional memory of what large-scale, pre-industrial construction actually looked like. The process was slow, massively expensive, and brutally laborious. The exact same combination of time and sweat that built Stonehenge, the pyramids, and Easter Island. The monumental Forgotten Stone still rests exactly where Roman workers dropped their iron picks nearly 2,000 years ago. It is a sobering relic of an empire that finally admitted some ambitions are simply not worth completing.